Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to your inaugural episode of listening to Tim ramble on about all things wine. So, we're going to start with winery sanitation and talk about winery cleanliness. Lecture outline, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some definitions. We're going to talk about cleaning, sanitizing, sterilization. Why do we clean? And how do we clean in a winery? I know this is riveting stuff, so I'll try to make it as remotely entertaining as possible. So, why is winery cleanliness so important? If we have good sanitation, we're going to have improved quality because we're going to be able to control our microflora. It's going to improve our consistency. It's going to improve our product safety. It's going to improve our ageability by not having problems, and it improves our microbiological stability because we know the bugs that we are dealing with. So it's really important for us to do it because, again, we always talk about microbiological warfare. So the thing is if you're going to set that stage, one of the most important things you can do is have a very well laid out battlefield so that you can conduct business in a way that encourages the microbes you want to live and discourages the ones that you don't want to not be there. And the other thing is we're going to talk about SOPs. I want you to go ahead and look over the SOP folder, take a look through those. They're probably good because you might go to some wineries that don't have any. You're welcome to kind of share those. It's a good idea to have some protocol in place just so employees know what they're supposed to do. And so these SOPs, standards, operating procedures, they help you reduce risk, you reduce worry, we use less chemical use, less water usage, and overall it reduces labor costs because you don't have to do things twice. Everybody's trained and they know what they're supposed to do. So some things that are just some important cleaning protocols. These are ones you have to have. These are required by the federal government. If you go to a winery that does not have these, they need to have them. You got to know when to clean. So before, after, or both. Some wineries do not clean after usage. They just leave whatever it is dirty, and then they just sterilize beforehand. And so some, in order to save water. So some bigger tank farm style wineries, they only clean once. They don't want to waste the chemical usage to clean it twice, which has always been interesting to me. Then you have to talk about what chemicals you're going to use. How are you going to use them? How do you mix them? And you've got to have all those things in your MSDS sheet book. So you've got to have a book with all the cleaners in it. And frequently they want the cleaners to actually be attached to the barrel that you're using. They want the label attached to it. The other things you need to do is how to clean, whether it's a pump or anything like that. But how do you clean? Is there a water temperature? Is there water quality? And then how are you going to, the mechanics involved? So you're going to scrub it. What are you going to do? And then the equipment you're going to need, you know the list. So let's define cleaning. Cleaning is an attempt to physically and chemically remove the food for microorganisms to eliminate hospitable environments for their growth. So basically, what we're trying to do is remove the food source so they don't want to live there. If you want to make sure people don't live somewhere, give them no food. Let them try to go live in Desert Valley, Death Valley. Nobody wants to live there because there's no food. So what we're trying to do is create a really clean environment where there's no sticky things that can be metabolized. And basically the drivers behind that are warm, wet surfaces, and then we've got sugar involved with making wine. So in order to clean, we just want to make sure we get rid of all that type of debris and material. So the thing is with cleanliness, how clean a winery depends on your tolerance to outside organisms and level of risk acceptance. There are a lot of old school wineries that just literally bring in the fruit and let whatever happens happens. And I've been to wineries in France that they just sort of wash off with a little bit of old water, and that's it. This cold water, and give it a rinse down every now and then. But a lot of times they don't clean anything because they just want the microbes that are in the background. They just feel like they're in balance, and that's their kind of way of doing things. And then the thing is that if you do that, whatever's growing is what's going to grow in your wine. And frequently, Brettanomyces becomes the dominant creature because it's a very robust yeast. So Pediococcus is a very robust bacteria, and they're kind of the cockroaches of the wine world, and they'll start to make your wine for you. And so you'll have this sort of stinky, horse poopy, mousy wine. But if that's what you've grown up and what you're used to, maybe that's what you want. So if you're looking to make really clean, technically sound wine that most people these days want to drink kind of an international style, you've got to be a lot cleaner. But again, every winery has different levels. Some people like to be very clean, and some people like to kind of let some things go. I find myself on the clean end personally as a winemaker. I like things fairly clean, but not ridiculously clean. I would like to spend more of my time making sure the chemistry of the wine is straight and making sure the wine itself has a healthy immune system rather than spending all your time cleaning. So sometimes I've been to wineries that spend so much time cleaning they forget to make the wine, and that can be a problem too. So there's always a balance that you have to find in that. So sometimes ultra clean wineries can almost shoot themselves in the foot to a degree because they're spending so much time again cleaning they forget to make the wine. But if you're ever in doubt, check out what the dairy industry is doing. If you want to know real cleaning protocols, milk spoils so easily. They have far less tolerance for anything microbe related than we do. So if you really want to learn some good protocols, do a dairy industry training. But the reality is, cleanliness is something you can touch. You can feel it. If you see or feel or smell something slimy, grimy, stinky, or hairy in your winery, you need to revise your cleaning protocols. So basically, just cleanliness is something you can see, touch, and feel. You can look in a tank and see if it's clean or not. So let's talk about what grape juice looks like. This is what we work with, and it is a fabulous food source. This is what, if you were a yeast, this is going to make you a really happy place. Think about what is in grape juice. We've got sugar, we've got amino acids, we've got all kinds of wonderful things, and all sorts of microbes want it. You like grape juice, they like grape juice. So it's basically an all-you-can-eat buffet. So the thing is, if you have a clean winery, you can never get rid of everything. But if your winery's clean, you get rid of that all-you-can-eat buffet. You get rid of the grape juice. You get rid of most of it so that you've got nothing left. So that it's just no sticky, gooey stuff around for microbes to live on. And if there's nothing there but some, uncooked Brussels sprouts, you aren't going to find a whole lot of microbes dwelling in that winery. That just helps keep that background pressure down. Now, if we're going to clean, here are the things that you basically need. You're going to need some sort of either clean in place equipment, CIP, clean in place. If you look down at that large tank cleaners, those are CIP systems where they just spray around over and over again, and you circulate liquid with a high pressure pump. And we do that a little bit at College Cellars with our dog, where we use the pressure washer to spray in place. And you can't scrub a tank that's 100 feet tall, and there are 100-foot tall tanks out there. So the idea is, if you can't scrub it, you're going to need to clean it in some other way. And so a 100-foot tall tank, you can't get on a ladder and scrub things. So you need to have the driving forces are, you're going to need some sort of water, you're going to need some sort of chemical, and then you're going to need some sort of scrubbing, cleaning, agitating action in order to clean things. So those are the real keys. And then because some of these chemicals are dangerous, sometimes gloves and safety goggles should be used when you're using some of the more aggressive ones. So this is a not clean winery. This is a winery in Hungary, and my friend Ian worked there. This is in Tokai, and they like their mold and they like all their stuff growing around, and this is what they consider some of the character of their wine. And they don't clean anything. It's just they don't clean their equipment at the end of the year. They don't do anything. Just it is what it is. And then this is an industrial winery using industrial cleaning, but they're smashing the wine to every wine here is going to be below pH 3.6. They're using lots of sulfur. They're using lots of chemicals. They're doing a whole bunch of things in order to make sure the wine has really good, well-built immune system. So it's got all the right pieces in place so they can use the chemistry of the wine to dictate the future of the wine rather than worrying so much about cleaning so much. But I would like to point out, if you look at this tank, and every winery you'll ever go to, notice the one that's kind of all bubbled up. That's one that somebody pumped out of without taking the top off, and they sucked it in. One of you will do this one day in your career. Try not to. It's a good way to get fired. And this is a clean winery. This is in Germany, where they have the strictest protocols out there, and which is really interesting to me because they're making pH 3.0 wine. But you can have wineries that are this immaculate. And there is one that functions up in, it's called Four Feathers Winery, up in Prosser, and their winery looks dang near like this. It is immaculate, and they have incredible cleaning protocols. I highly recommend you guys check them out. So the thing is we've got to talk about the regime. The first thing we do is pre-rinse to remove any major debris. Then we add some detergent, we rinse, then we neutralize the detergent, and then sanitize if we want to, and then rinse it as needed. So this is just the basic rules. We want to get the junk out of the tank or the hose or whatever. You get the bulk of it out. Then we add some detergent, because that detergent, we don't want to dilute it by putting it directly on the wine or the grape juice or anything else. and then we scrub it or clean in place. Then we rinse, and then we have to neutralize the detergent because you don't want the detergent in your wine, and then sanitize if we so desire, and then rinse as needed. This is the kind of 6 steps of a good sanitation protocol. So I want to talk about some various types of cleaners. Water removes 99% of all microbes. Then we're going to talk about anionic cleaners like soda ash and sodium hydroxide, also known as caustic soda. And then we talk about cationic cleaner. There's some sulfuric and phosphoric and peracetic acid. These are ones that are cleaners that are really good at cleaning on the acidic side of the spectrum. And then, of course, just elbow grease and eyes. I mean, it's really important that you become a part of this and not just trust the chemistry to do it all. Your eyes are very important in cleaning. So let's talk about sodium hydroxide. It's also known as caustic soda. Highly effective cleaner. The only different downside is that it'll burn in really high concentrations. So you've got to be really careful when you use it. This is why we don't use it at college cellars. I've got a bunch of new incoming students. Even though I love using sodium hydroxide because it's such a powerful cleaner, it's super cheap, and it's fantastic as a cleaner. But it's so dangerous that I don't really want students to be around it. The downside is it also has a lot of sodium in it. And so when you're rinsing it down the drain, you're sending a lot of sodium down the drain. So, but if you're hooked up to a treatment plant, it's probably not a big deal. But if you have a treatment pond or you're going to be using this water for irrigation, you've got to be really, really careful with that sodium content because you'll end up messing up your soil if you use it. So just a quick, note about the downsides of sodium hydroxide. So sodium carbonate, which is soda ash, which is a piece of sodium percarbonate, which I'll get to in a second. It's again strong alkaline, not as strong as sodium hydroxide. This is pretty much what you use. You've been used to using this. It's not as dangerous. It's cheap. It's not as powerful as sodium hydroxide, but again, it's not as dangerous. So take your risk reward. If you're in a small winery, you've got plenty of time to clean and scrub, and you're working in small tanks, sodium carbonate's just fine. If you are working at an industrial winery where you've got to do CIP, you're going to be using a lot of sodium hydroxide. So let's talk about cationic. There's sulfuric and phosphoric acid and sulfamic acid. These are fantastic. Also known as star sand. If any of you are brewers, star sand is fantastic. You just get done after you wash with sodium hydroxide usually, and then you can spray on a little bit of star sand and just leave it on there, and it has a long-term sanitizing effect as well as cleaning effect. And they're really fantastic for removing rust, minerals, biofilms, and other things like that. So this is a good thing to rotate in about once a week into your cleaning regime. Just bring it in every now and then. It's really, really good stuff. I am kind of got introduced to these about a year ago and have really enjoyed how much they can keep our tanks cleaner. And they also help if you're on a well and you're getting a lot of sort of buildup from just the minerals in the water. So it's fantastic. So again, that star sand is a good example. I want to talk about citric acid real quick. It's not a cleaner. It's used in wineries a lot, and we need to knock it off. This has got to go away. We got to get rid of citric. Citric is not a good thing to have in your winery. If you guys have had any microbiology, there's this thing known as the Krebs cycle. It's also known as the citric acid cycle, which means everything eats citric acid. Every microbe, every bug, they love it. And it grows everywhere. And so once a lot of people mix it with SO2 and spray it around, but once the SO2 disappears, you've got citric everywhere. And I used to use citric acid, totally guilty, was raised on it, was taught that's how it's done. And the reality is, as soon as we stopped using it at college cellars, all the surface molds went away. We always had black mold everywhere. And as soon as we went to peracetic acid, it changed. So don't use citric. That's all I'm saying. And most importantly, when cleaning, elbow grease. Just do it. Regular maintenance is really important. So I want to go around on a couple of these items, but the one I find famous is the one at the top on the left, which is a little ring. It looks kind of like a white donut. So I went to a winery, and they called me in as a consultant, and they said, we are having an issue. And I said, what's your issue? And they said, well, every single case of wine we have has one bottle of Riesling that's sweet that re-ferments. Just one in every single case is re-fermenting. And I looked at them before I even walked in their winery. I said, you have a 12-head bottling filler, don't you? And they said, yeah, we do. How did you know? And so I went in, to their bottle filler and looked up, and all of them were clean except for this one. And what they were doing is they're propping up the filler spouts when they steamed, so this wasn't getting steamed. And every single time that bottle hit that, it dosed that dirty yeast, one cell of yeast into every bottle, maybe 2 cells. It was enough to inoculate it, and it would re-ferment. So just again, you can see that that's not clean. Anybody can see that that's not clean. If you're working on a bottling line, you better be checking all your contact surfaces to make sure it's clean. And honestly, even though it's all broken and gross, and all it would have taken is a spray of some ethanol on there, probably to neutralize it. It probably would have been just fine. But it's pretty obvious they weren't doing that. So these other ones are all ones that I took in wineries I've been to that didn't make the greatest wines, and I always thought it was very interesting to see just how filthy some places can be. Keys to effective cleaning. First off is got to make sure you got plenty of contact time. You got to make sure you've got enough chemical concentration. Just read the label, mix it how it's supposed to be. Read the instructions. I know it's a crazy idea, guys, but trust me on this one. It helps you out. The temperature of the cleaner. The hotter it is, the greater the effectiveness to a point. You don't want to get it up above like 180 degrees because then you start to actually, it evaporates and then you stick to stuff. The cleaning chemical won't have an opportunity to work. But yes, it is better. So trying to get hotter water does help with the cleaner. Some sort of mechanical action too, whether it's scrubbing or high pressure spray and agitation. And CIP, let's talk about this. Clean in place, automated. There are a number of wineries that have this built into the tank, just flat built into the tank. Every single tank has one, has a pump on it. As soon as they pump out, they just go ahead and start doing a pump over, basically with sodium hydroxide. And usually they use really hot water, 160, 170, 180 degrees, stronger chemicals, but since no one's touching it, no burns. And it's faster, programmable, and uses just the exact amount of water every single time. Does not have any of the inherent issues of people. It doesn't make mistakes. It just does what it does. Downside is they're really expensive. You still require a manual check. Somebody's got to look at it. And then it's got to be programmed correctly. The machine is only as good as the operator. But they are really cool. In larger wineries, you'll see this quite frequently. Then clean in place manual. The advantage is you got a visual check because you're right there. There's no equipment really required other than your hands. Typically small wineries, typically small equipment that you can actually physically touch. Downside is human error, training, and you can't get big, large equipment. The other side is it's slow. If you had to scrub out a 1,000,000-liter tank by hand, it would take you days. But if you had a CIP, it'd take you 20 minutes. And the other thing that's dangerous too about just cleaning in place, especially inside of a tank, is liability. Putting people inside of a tank is horrible. I mean, it's a really difficult place to be. They could possibly get asphyxiated, or they get more opportunity for chemical burns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Some references for y'all. Cheers.